how long have you been in flipping houses? Because I know the first time I met you was a while ago. Like it was, I know we were at the title company the first time I met you. I was like 18 and I'm 23 now. And you're probably flipping houses way before that too.
It started in like 20. So I started doing the rentals, essentially the Burr method,
Yeah.
remodeling and keeping them as rentals. But then I did my first flip in like 2018, 2019.
Nice. Because
Yeah.
what back in the day when you were doing flips like that, where were you getting them from? Like, were you just running random lead gen or what were you doing?
A lot of it was just off the MLS, right
Oh
off
wow.
MLS, deals. I had a realtor because I didn't have my license at that time. I was using a realtor, and some of it was Facebook, just refers, and pretty much MLS. That was the main thing at that point.
Damn. Those were the days when you could burr properties from the MLS. Like you could buy them and still burr them.
The first three I could, and I
That's
told,
wild.
last couple weeks ago, I mentioned this one on Wayland and
Hmm.
bought it. It was like a two bed, one bath, big two stall off the back. And Dawson, you know what that's going to run right now.
Yeah,
I got it for $68,000
that is wild.
on market, and it was in pretty good shape.
Were you even like competing? Were you competing with other offers or no?
There was other people, but not, I mean, it just was different. It was so different.
That's weird. So you paid like full list price, or at least like somewhat below, maybe a little.
I think it was listed for like around 80 or 90, and then that's what ended up getting it done. But that house today, a similar scenario would have started off at like 150, 160, and probably sold for 130, 140, you know?
If we'd have just been burned properties 20 years ago, that'd have been nuts.
Yeah.
Topic of today though is because I know you're huge, you're killing it with the realtor referrals, and I think you have been for a while. But it's something like we talk about a lot, because obviously it's a great resource. It's a dream
Mhm.
resource. It's free 99, $0, and you got these realtors who hit you up with the best deals that most likely no one else is touching and no one else knows about. How did you get realtors to work with you, or how do you get realtors in general to trust you in the first spot? Like, is there anything that you do, or is it just like, hey, I'm myself? It's what I built in the past few years, or is it just like, do you have any certain ways to help with that?
Yes, it's a great question. I mean, I think as I was kind of thinking about this conversation earlier, I think there's kind of the two biggest things. One, just being a fellow realtor,
Hmm.
having your license and knowing that, they're referring their client, who they're representing, right, the seller, to another realtor, that we have certain, code of conduct,
Hmm.
ethics, etc., that we got to abide by. And that's huge, right?
Hmm.
So along with that, the second piece is really knowing that that they're gonna trust that you're gonna follow through and close on this deal
Hmm.
to the terms of the contract, right? So they know, they trust that you're gonna close on the date we decide. That's cash, no contingencies, whatever the deals are of the contract.
Hmm.
And so that's the two biggest things, is knowing you'll follow through and buy it and make it easy and as is, probably, if it's that type of property. And two, that having the license, I'm not saying you have to have your license, but that helps a ton,
Hmm.
knowing that they're referring it to another realtor, that will do good on the other side.
Right, right. And that's probably huge because, I mean, at the end of the day, those clients are coming to somebody most likely that they trust on
Mhm.
a personal level. Maybe they've been a friend for a long time. Because most likely those people who come to you are in a kind of a bind. They're more honest with their realtor, like, hey, I'm behind on payments, or like, hey, this property sucks. I'm just letting you know. And very few people get that trust. And so it kind of, in a way, you represent that realtor as well. So they probably need, like, okay, I need
Yeah,
someone who's not going to make me look bad here because this is probably someone close to them, or maybe not, but regardless, their reputation's on the line as well. And so I'm sure that's a
100%.
big part of it.
Well, just think of the conversations, right? So, like, one we just got under contract a couple days ago. It's
Mhm.
been on the MLS for a long time. Their listing agent is going to them, and let's just say the scenario is something like this: Hey, I got this investor. He'll pay as is, for this price. You know, and they lay it all out for them, right? They lay it all out for the sellers, whether it's one of them or a couple of them or family, whatever. When they're having that conversation with that seller, and I'm not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're almost talking on my behalf, that they have to feel real confident in that message to the sellers that
Mm-hmm.
this guy's a real deal and he's going to close. I've worked with him before. He's a good guy. And that there's so many offshoots of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to be trustworthy. They got to like you. You know, you got to be normal. You got to be good looking. No kidding, but you got to be like, you
Yeah.
got to be a guy that someone wants to refer business to.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but you have to do those things. Like, if you're not a nice guy and you do bad deals, realtors aren't probably going to refer to you.
Right.
So anyway, back to that, like, when they're telling the seller on why they should maybe take this deal, you have to follow through, and they have to trust that you're going to do that, because, like you said, if, let's say, I back out or I'm inexperienced and don't know what the heck I'm doing, and
Mm-hmm.
I end up backing out, that's going to be major pie on the face of that listing agent, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, and there's a lot of just building reputation and rapport and calling, cold, it starts with cold calling, cold texting these agents. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
if you ever come across something that needs work and it's, you know, let me know. So there's a lot of upfront work to get to this point. And I'd say, until recently, I'd say it's kind of been years in the making, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's taken probably 3, 4, 5 years to kind of build this. And now they're getting a little more consistent,
Mm-hmm.
where before it's probably maybe once every couple months. I'd say it's almost to the point where it's almost weekly,
Mm-hmm. You mentioned reaching out to these agents too. Like, I know it's you probably have to have some sort of strategy to not come off weird, because I'm sure they get text calls all the time that are like, "Hey man, anytime you got off market property, send them my way." It's like, okay, never heard that before, right? So it's like, when you're reaching out to these people, but also, what's your strategy there, but also, what type of agent are you trying to get in touch? Are these top producers? Are these, people maybe that you've never aren't around the block? Maybe someone who you notice has listed a couple of bad properties in the past. Like, what is there a strategy to finding the right type of agent or that type of personality type? But also, what do you say to these people when you do reach out to them?
The big thing is, when these agents are out, they're, every realtor's out doing similar stuff that I'm doing, meeting with buyers and sellers, right, to help them buy or sell their property.
Mm-hmm.
So, when these, let's call them listing agents that are meeting with sellers, are going out to these appointments and meeting with the sellers, there's going to be times that they come across these properties that, this seller is just wanting to know their options, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they go there, and the property may be in tough shape. It may be hard to list, even though you can list any house. Ultimately, it's up to the seller, but uh, the goal is to always give, the seller what their options are, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if it's a house that needs work, or maybe they just don't like showings, or maybe they don't want anybody in their house, or it's just maybe in tough shape where the listing pictures may not be good,
Mm-hmm.
that agent may immediately think, hey, here's my options, right? If it's okay with the seller, let's get a hold of maybe a couple investors to get through there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they may even not need to go to market with it. It's always being front of mind, and first, front of mind, really, when they get in those scenarios, that when they meet with those sellers and then they're in those situations, those conversations, we're one of the first people, or the first people they think of, to at least
Mm-hmm.
give them an option, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hey, before we, let's get this list ready in 2, 3 weeks, but maybe, we can get someone that'll just buy it as is, so you don't have to do any repairs or anything like
Mm-hmm.
this. Boom, you get them through and see what we can offer on it.
Would you say, because I mean, our top producers, because I have a feeling top producers probably, I mean, they probably have connections as well, but I mean, I feel like a lot of those top producing agents that are really really big and doing a lot of volume, they're probably the type of guy to buy it themselves as well. and I don't know, maybe if I'm wrong on, I think, probably correct there. There's a lot of big dog agents that would have the funds or capital or resources to just buy it themselves or flip it themselves. So, especially finding those realtors, I'm sure can be tough. As far as like trying to know who to reach out to or who can hit you up. I'm sure it is years in the making. I'm sure it probably takes messages over time, emails over time of just like, hey, just letting you know, introducing myself. Is that like kind of, is it just more of an introduction and just over time, eventually it just kind of just gradually turns into like, okay, I remember this guy now, just over the years of just outreach pretty much.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So starting, 3 years ago, probably 4 years ago, I made it a goal to make, I think it was like 5 realtors a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was kind of right before I got my license or when I got my license. And so I'd cold call 5 agents a week at least. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it was more than that. And say, hey, my name's Cole. This is what I do. If you ever come across these properties, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it was cold calling.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say now I try to still do that. I need to get better at that again, where I actually physically call. But I've gone through and texted a ton of agents.
Mm-hmm.
Ton. Probably every single agent, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, my name's Cole. We haven't met. This is what I can do. If you're in these situations, this is how I can help you and your client if you ever come across these type of properties. So it's been calling, it's been texting, it's been emailing. Yeah, emailing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just like anything else, if you keep hammering, you keep working at it, it gets a little easier and you start to build up those referrals.
Right, because eventually it just turns into a compounding interest. Obviously, it's over the years, it's gotten you to the point where now your name, it's probably that much easier because now, he worked with so and so. Now, and so told them about you, right? And so like it's kind of like through an agent, like, oh yeah, I know this guy Cole, right? Or something. And it's just a process of over time. I mean, because what you say, it helps too, emailing, texting, calling them, but also having somewhat of like a professional presence. Maybe they look you up on the internet, be like, who is this guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they try that. I'm sure it helps because you have flips under the belt. You've done some deals here and there. Like I'm sure that if you're brand new, without an internet presence or really without any reputation or any reputability whatsoever, it probably would be really tough for a realtor to be like, yep, that's the guy I want to put my reputation on the line for. And so I'm sure that goes into a huge factor, and it's probably why it's gotten a lot easier, when they look you up, and they see on Zillow, oh, he did 100 transactions within the last 12 months. And a lot of these are exactly what I'm trying to get rid of right now. it's just hyper relevant, and I definitely agree. So with that too, with these agents, I mean, is there ever, because then it goes into incentive of like, okay, why would a realtor not just try to buy it themselves? Maybe they don't have the knowledge, the capital resources, but also what is in it for them to even hit you up? Like, do you give them any financial incentives? Do you give them like a referral? Like, do you give them more of just like more of like a fee of some kind? Or like, I mean, how have you structured that as far as making it more of an incentive for those people not only to hit you up, but continue to hit you up and also tell others about you at the same breath?
Yeah, so something too before I answer that I thought of while you're talking is, so about a year ago I contacted all the main brokerages, in and around our market. And so it's the owner, of the actual brokerages, and said, hey, also, here's what I'm doing. If you or any of your broker associates come across these deals, so all the top, Dawson ones in our area, I've talked to all of them, hey, if you ever come across this or your brokerage comes across this. So that helped too, going right to the actual broker, the owner, which most instances usually is the owner. What am I doing as well is it's really two things. One is saying, hey, if this works, with your seller, and everyone's comfortable with this, they can rep me as the buying agent as well. Right. So that would be their, compensation on that piece. The other thing would be, like a realtor or referral fee through the brokerages. Traditionally, the easiest and best is just having them rep me as their buyer's agent. So that's usually the best. And again, and sometimes they may not even honestly want that, and I rep myself, or that they sometimes they just every situation's a little different, it just kind of depends. The buildup to all this is like being like a seller's like the sellers that call me, the selling agent, excuse me. They hear my name or my company, other people are talking about it. Oh, hey, I sold to this person. Oh, hey, did you see that flip that Cole did? Oh, yeah, yeah. So there's kind of that noise, right? And then it gets to the point where you kind of got that positive noise and good ththings happening. And then all of a sudden they'll come across the property like that, right? Well, that's where you want to be front of mind. Oh, I heard, they're thinking to themselves, oh, I heard Cole did this. I heard he's trustworthy. I heard he does a good job, honest, does these good things. And, okay, let me give him a call, right? So connect with him. And, so that's the background to that point. And, once they get there, it really ultimately depends on, really I'd say the seller's motivation to bring this full 360 now is, sometimes there's times where if it's a property that's been listed, that it's been sitting there so long, the seller's just at a point they're like, hey, listing agent, Jim, for example, we just want to get rid of this. Who can you call or text or know that can just come in and we're ready to move off this thing, right? Again, that's a scenario sometimes where, they may not even, they just want to rep the seller, find a quick buyer they can close quick and off they go.
And going in this process, doing it for as long as you have, I'm sure there's some maybe mistakes that you've made, maybe with certain realtors, whether it was choosing the type of realtor, maybe, I don't know, has there really been any mistakes that you've made early on that you're like, man, I probably wouldn't do that again with any other realtors, or maybe I don't know, there could be a million things that you could have done. I don't know if there's any like standout mistakes at all that you've done that you're like, okay, that was something I'll never do again.
I'd say the only mistake on the investing side was maybe offering too much, right? Maybe for a
Yeah.
property you buy and you end up not making much or not what you thought. There can't really be any mistakes in this, because as long as you're building relationships with realtors, right? Being a good option to help be a buyer for them or their client, right? So you're creating good connections, good networking, good relationships with these people. In the end, everyone's got to win, right? Sellers got to win. As long as you're being honest, ethical, putting offers in there, putting out offers out on these properties, and whether they take them or not. Unless I misunderstand your question, Dawson, I don't know how there can really be any mistakes on there. What I'd say is where the mistakes would probably come is maybe if you're early on and you're really new to this, and you say, "Hey, I'll pay 150,000 for example," right? And they accept it.
Yeah.
And then, like, before you sign the actual PA, let's say it's a verbal, because sometimes you have verbal stuff going on. You go, I screwed up on my numbers. Sorry, I meant 130, right?
Right.
I'd say that would be a mistake, right? Not that mistakes happen, and if it's not under contract, I guess you legally weren't obligated really, but those are the type of things that I would avoid. Is just when you give them a number, you give them your terms, make sure that's something, whether it's verbal or written, you're going to stick to it, because your word is a lot and everything, and you really want to stick to your word. Definitely in this, realtor referral type world. You hope the first deal isn't your last deal, right? The first deal is, additional transactions you'll do with this agent, this brokerage. And if you started off bad, or you get the reputation with an individual or a brokerage that you'll say one thing, and then hours, days, weeks later, you may change.
Like we spoke about before, reputation to these agents is everything. And I'm sure, if you go give them an offer and you take back your word, I mean, dude, that's probably a blacklist, an immediate blacklist,
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is a huge mistake. And not saying, that you've made any mistakes. It was more so like if there's any mistakes you've made, or maybe something you definitely have avoided to not do. And it sounds like it's just, hey, if you give them a number, you got to perform. Otherwise, that could get you an easy blacklist. Because I mean, as far as the numbers that you've given, you've performed on all that stuff. And maybe there's times too where just to build a relationship, maybe there is a time where you've given an offer and you've performed on it. Maybe it's a little bit more than what you wanted to pay, but just for the sake of the relationship, you've maybe done it too in the same sense. But how, maybe there's agents out there too, and this is another question I have is when you're giving these offers to these agents, because I'm sure there's some agents who reach out to you and be like, oh, yep, we have it listed for 350, or maybe it's a rare occasion, but you say they're like, oh, you could come in and pay 300 for a cash offer or whatever. It's like, how do you explain to these agents without, honestly, like in the most blunt way possible, without looking like a scumbag, to being like, hey, it's going to be a very low offer, And so how do you keep your reputation while also kind of going that route where it's like, hey, you got to understand where I'm coming from. The numbers have to work. I mean, do most agents understand, or some like kind of standoffish when you do that, or how do you approach that side of things?
Yeah, great question. So I feel since I've had my license, in our area, we're pretty lucky. We got a pretty good business environment, and along with that, we got a lot of great agents. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty tight knit community, even though we're 300,000 give or take. Feels like everyone kind of knows each other. Everyone works pretty hard. Being a pretty progressive community in the investing side, I feel like it's a fairly easy, and I think it's just because I become better at it too. Is
Mm-hmm.
I always, if there's an agent I've worked with before and I'm going to give them a below list price offer, I like to call and explain it to them. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
just so you know, when you see this offer come through your email, you know, this is me. This is me representing myself and my company and offer from myself. I buy properties to either
Mm-hmm.
remodel them and sell them, or maybe keep them as a rental. So just so you know, when you see the number, that's just what works for me and on the investment side. So don't get upset. I say something like this, don't get upset or confused by the offer. Hopefully it's
Yeah,
something
or take
you're,
it personal.
yeah, don't take it personal. This is something hopefully your sellers will at least consider. And I guess you'd call it warming them up to it. You call them and warm them up to kind of your plan and strategy with the offer. Because I think a lot of times if it's an agent worked with, or if you just type it up and send it, your chance of getting that is pretty rare. Definitely if they don't know you. So it's good to just introduce yourself, talk, you know, so hear voice to voice, right? Establish that 5, 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 minute relationship there so they know when they actually look over the offer, uh, they know a little bit more about you and what you're about. Because sometimes they may think they see my LLC name and they might think it's a client of mine. And, if they know I'm a realtor, again, it's kind of back to the realtor stuff. If they know I'm a realtor and it's my company submitting the offer, they might be like, oh, okay, it's Cole, he's part of Ray's, he's a realtor. And it just gives you a little more substance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
We talked about before, you've been in the industry for a long time. And I'm sure you've tried other marketing methods, and I know you probably do all kinds of other things now. And at the end of the day, when it comes to marketing, it's what we talk about, like on my channel too, a lot, is just like, yes, there's all these marketing things you can do, but at the end of the day, getting motivated sellers, if you can get the most quality motivated sellers for the cheapest cost, that's what I always say, that's the name of the game in this industry, assuming that you know your numbers, you know how to execute on those deals and monetize them, right? That's also very, very important, is that your sales skills and you can actually complete these deals. But like in the past, as far as because if I'm wrong, Realtor referrals are a big part of your business now. I mean, what does it look like business expenses for you at the moment for other marketing? I mean, is it lower than what it was years ago? And I know you do other pieces of marketing, but how has that shift maybe changed from in the past when you were forced to maybe spend money on marketing? Where are you spending less than what you did in the years prior?
I wish it was less. I wish it was
Right.
less. I'd say, like I mentioned earlier, I'd say this realtor referral thing didn't really start to kind of grab until, 8 to 10 months ago, So it's still
Mm-hmm.
in its beginning stages where prior to that still had, Google, Facebook, some pay per
Mm-hmm.
lead, uh,
Mm-hmm.
direct mail, and a couple other smaller things. But I feel since I'm trying to grow, right? I'm continuing to maintain the marketing that we have done up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Maintaining that on social media, online, direct mail, uh, but continuing to put more effort in, the realtor referrals, whether that's texting, calling, emailing these agents, building relationships. Just know I'm here if they ever come across these situations with sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, I guess you could say a hypothetical could be, hey, in 1 year, 2 years, if this continues to grow, you could maybe wind down on some of those other channels that you're paying. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to grow and you're trying to, yeah, when you're trying to grow,
Mm-hmm.
I think your marketing should stay the same or grow. Um,
Yeah.
so that's really the point I'm at, is trying to grow. And I think, unfortunately, just when you do that, you can't go down in marketing costs. It stays the same or increases.
Yeah, because absolutely. I mean, we've always talked about this over the years too. There's pieces to the pie when it comes to this game as far as getting motivated sellers. Everyone has their trigger, and there's always constantly things moving. And how you want to create it is to have a machine that's out there doing it for you. And I think, and in the beginning, of course, too, everyone has their thing. Everyone has their one or two things that work really, really well for them, and or at least that's what it should be. All the successful people that I've met in this space have all been like, yeah, I started out doing this, we doubled down on this, and it worked, and then that gave us the ability to scale now forward, where now we have multiple different pieces of marketing to continue on and make a whole machine. Because this too is just as well as we do. Like, the people who come through Google are different from the people who come through Facebook, who come through direct mail. And it's another whole conversation we could get on, which is bottom, middle, and top of funnel when it comes to this game, because that's a whole another hour conversation in itself of the different types of marketing and what that looks like for a time frame on return. But I mean, I think, yeah, you've got the game figured out, especially in this realtor referral space. I mean, it's honestly, you're probably the best I've ever seen do it. Just because a lot of people, I mean, not only do they not have the credibility necessarily to know what they're talking about and actually get realtors to hit them up, but very rarely do people actually stay persistent and actually continue to reach out to agents. Because like you said, this has been a process of over the last 5 years, where now it's
Mhm.
like, okay, we get a good lead every week from these realtors, but it wasn't like that before. I mean, for probably the first couple of years, you probably got nothing, right? Or maybe one, if that. And so I think that's what's important to shine light on, is it's a compounded game. And that's where, I'm sure you could agree, in this space where a lot of beginner wholesalers, or a lot of these gurus, and a lot of this noise with wholesaling real estate and flipping houses in general, a lot of people do think it is a lot faster than it is, just because of, in this industry, it is known for being like quick money sometimes. But it's like you're proof, I'm proof, everyone else that we know in this area who is successful with it is also proof that, hey man, this takes a while, and you got to be in the game for the long haul to get real true results. Because I'm sure a lot of people could watch this and say, now I'm going to go and hit five realtors a week, just like you did, Cole. But it's like, hey, you got to know what happened behind it, and if you're willing to do what it takes to get there, then you could have success if you have the reputability behind you and you do everything right, and don't make offers that are that you can't perform on either. But
Like I said in the beginning, the two biggest things would be is having your license, right? If it's in South Dakota or another state, I would recommend anybody, if you want to grow this, if you're in real estate at all, honestly, if you're in real estate at all, you should have your license in your state.
mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I didn't have it in the beginning, and I'm glad I got it, because it gets you into some new worlds and all the things we talked about today. So definitely, get your license. And then the second piece of that is that, yeah, it takes time, and you just got to do the right things, do the the ethical things, and we put a lot of offers out there that don't get accepted. But in this specific deal, is you hopefully have a seller that, me as the buyer, can come in and answer their needs they need right now, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
the convenience of speed, whether that's the convenience of buying as is, and they're just a property they just aren't just ready to get rid of. And you can come in and be that, kind of that easy button I say a lot, to
Mm-hmm.
hopefully sell this property with ease, and they can move on to the next phase that they're looking for. So,
Right. And that's kind of the last question I had written down that I definitely wanted to chat about too, because having your license, like you said, is very important in this process of this lead gen source for sure, and probably has opened up a lot of doors for you. Because there is, a lot of gurus out there who, I think, I don't mean to crap on Pace Morby at all, but he was a guy that I vividly remember and still to this day talks about how most realtors make 30,000 a year, all this whatever, how getting your license makes no sense. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, I really do think there is a value. You are looked at differently when you're a licensed realtor, for sure.
yeah.
Like you are looked at a lot differently than you would be myself, who isn't licensed. And so I think looking at that and understanding, like, okay, why aren't people getting in their license? I think is a lot of, and I could be wrong, but a lot of the fact is they maybe have the belief, which I definitely had this belief, and maybe you did too, of, well, can I even do this type of thing if I'm a licensed realtor? And I think, and you could talk more about it too, but what I've noticed and what I've met a lot more realtors over time and in this space is most of the people who honestly are doing a lot of these deals are licensed. And it's, you start to realize that, wow, maybe getting your license doesn't hold as many restrictions as many people would think. But yeah, you can talk more about that too, as far as maybe what you thought it was in the beginning and what you actually have the freedom to do.
Yeah, for me specifically in the beginning is you look at it as like the cost. What's the cost of it? The timing to get your license. Do you have the time to take the education, the courses, things like that to get your license? So for me, that was the big thing. Is I'm flipping houses, I have rentals. I don't know if I have time for the education or the money to be able to afford to get the license. Well, it gets to the point where, right, like, long story short, you see what you're paying your realtor, and you're like, well, hey, if I just get my license, that's always like kind of the segue from like point A to point B, is when you start to add it up, you're like, wow, like, even though my agent's taking great care of me, it's awesome. If I get my agent or if I get my license, I can save that money, list my own properties. So that's like the easy, okay, boom, I got my license, right? And you hear people say, and I've other people on, some of the podcasts and stuff I used to listen to, get your license, get your license. Well, it's just one of those things, you don't know what you don't know, right? You think you know, but once you get your license and you see kind of like the credibility it can give you and the opportunities when you're in a brokerage and you got all these other agents around you, just the networking. Hey, how can I help you? How can you help me? How can you help your seller? How can we help your buyer? Right? Just, you get into this whole new world once you have this license. It's hard to explain other than it just opens you into a lot more opportunities and circles, and the brokerage, call it just the brokerage community in general. Because to get your license, there's again classes, ethical things, and you got to learn, go through, teach you all these courses in education to make sure you're doing good by your sellers and buyers and just being a good realtor, right? So when you have that I just thought of this. It came through my head like a million miles an hour. It's like, think of a doctor, right? Maybe this isn't going to be a good example. What I'm
No, shoot it.
But think of a doctor, right? Are you going to trust a doctor that has had his education or not, right? Well, the real estate game is not a medical doctor's, scenario, but it's kind of similar, right? You're always going to probably trust or have more faith in someone that has that education and knowledge.
Absolutely. Has that label in general. But yeah, I agree 100%.
And there's kind of two things I wanted to add to this is, being an investor with a realtor license is one thing, right? Because in that scenario, I'm really representing just myself, right? Or maybe these agents are representing me on these when I'm buying these properties. But there's also the other side of it where I have my realtor license and I'm representing clients that are buyers and sellers, right? So there is like there's a line there. Everything we're talking about today really is me being an investor, but then also having my license, right? But then me being a realtor and representing buyers and sellers, that's a totally kind of different situation.
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So there's
Absolutely.
opportunity with that as well, where I first got my license, I'd never planned on buying, or excuse me, repping buyers and sellers.
Mhm.
Well, flash forward now, and I actually enjoy that process a lot. Getting referred clients to myself, meeting new people, helping them buy and sell. And there's just, again, that, I may have a new buyer client that I represent to buy their first home, but their uncle wants to sell their house as is, right?
Mhm.
So it's just all those connections in the web of that can lead to great things. So I don't know if I fully answered your question the best there, did I?
No, you definitely did. Definitely exactly what I'm looking for. Because like that's like I said, that's just a big thing. And honestly, like even me and even Caden too as well, like that was a big reason why we never thought about even the whole licensing because we thought we had a huge, huge assumption about realtors. Like we fully drank the juice when it came to like, dude, realtors don't know anything about this type of game. Like we're gonna stay in our own lane. We're gonna do this fast. And part of it was because we were just like we were so tunnel vision of like this is what we're off market properties, nothing else, which isn't a bad thing. But then once we got good enough and kind of started to meet more people and started to meet more licensed agents and especially meeting down the line of other people in the game, especially you're another guy where it's like, oh, all these guys are licensed and they're doing this. It's like weird. Okay, we want to get in this clique now. Like this is it really is a clique when as much as you want to believe it, where it's like at the end of the day, like you said it, I think it's a great example where no one wants to get surgery on them from a self-taught doctor at the end of the day, but they have that label on them, doctor, whoever. You're just going to be looked at differently, whether you believe that or not, whether you like it or not. You're going to be looked at differently with that label and having a license sometimes, and even representing people who are maybe have the money, they're buying a nice house, they're doing this. That gives you that much more credibility on just your stat sheet and your reputation for these other agents to see you doing these things. Oh, he's also helping out people who can afford these things, and so this is just another side of his business. It is cool, but also too the benefits. We can also get into this rabbit hole too. Is get the specialty of having access to off market properties, but then also retail buyers in the same breath. So I mean, if you want to talk about that as well, and maybe that's how that's helped, your business and in our business in general and stuff we've done together too.
That's huge. That's huge. And yeah, again, we're lucky in Sioux Falls. I'd say, most all the agents in and around Sioux Falls are very good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Agents, realtors, broker associates, it's the same thing in our market, right? As far as
Mm-hmm.
what we call them. Depending on what conversation, I may call it agents or realtors, but everyone's really good. We take care of our people and do the best we can to serve clients. And so yeah, like when I'm meeting a new buyer client, I've learned a ton on the investing side to help them as well. That's what's been pretty rewarding too, is,
Mm-hmm.
I know the cost of a new water heater down to the penny. I know the cost of this. So when I'm out showing my clients, these houses, I know exactly what it'll cost. If they're concerned about this foundation issue or this window issue or this electrical issue, I've seen it a lot of times where I can say, hey, this is probably what it's going to cost, so make sure when we're type up an offer, you keep that in mind. So that's been a huge asset for my clients, I feel, is having that investor background and hat I can put on for those conversations because I've been through it a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like you said, is uh, for buyers, I think this is what you said, to have access to off market deals that I come across is a
Mm-hmm.
huge advantage too to some of my clients, because some of my clients are investors as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It may not be someone, sometimes it's the buyer that might live in the house, sometimes it's a buyer that may flip it or keep it as a long-term rental. So um, yeah, I mean, at the end of this, it definitely, if it's that client realtor relationship, you're just trying to do everything in your power to help them out, you know, give them give them a good deal or a fair deal on any transaction. And yeah, giving them access to maybe an off-market deal I have and my construction knowledge
Hmm.
is huge. Is huge because not a lot of realtors have that either.
I think we hit the nail on the head. I mean, is there any other thoughts that you have as far as this subject that maybe you'd want anyone listening to this know, whether they have their license, don't have their license? Maybe they play a little bit in both sides. I mean, what is your final thoughts as far as kind of your synopsis for today?
Yeah, so I'd say I wanted to refer to this. I'd say right now, Realtor Referrals is probably, you know, 10, 15% of
Hmm.
of our business.
Hmm.
If you're just starting off, it could be 100%. I think it should be. You might say, "Hey, I'm going to spend all my time posting on Facebook, right? Doesn't cost me anything. I'm going to, spend all my time doing that, see what happens." Well, you can do that. But what we've really done is over time is, got our 4 or 5 things that work well, and
Hmm.
they work well for a specific reason. And each one of those, call it 20%. There's a strategy to this 20%, this 20%. And plus, we're in a market that's smaller. So it's really hard just to do one thing, right?
Hmm.
Maybe if you're in
Hmm.
like a LA, Las Vegas, whatever, you can maybe do Facebook really well and create enough volume. Well, for us in
Hmm.
our smaller market, we have to do
Hmm.
multiple things well to kind of create the volume we need to have a sustainable business.
Hmm.
So I would say, definitely have this be part of what you do in the beginning. It takes time. Uh, you're going to get a lot of, for every 100 realtors you call, they may not call you back, but over time, keep building the momentum, build that rapport, um, keep showing that you follow through on deals, keep networking, take them out to lunch, coffee, whatever. Continue to show that you're honest and follow through, and you'll take care of them and the seller in the transaction, and make it easy and close the deal. And over time, it might take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but over time, um, it's going to pay off. And this definitely isn't something. It's not a, it's not a get rich quick kind of a deal. It's just like most things in business. It's 10
Hmm.
times harder than you ever think it'll be. Um, but if you keep working at it, it should be pretty rewarding for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Otherwise, no, I appreciate your time today, Cole. It was great kind of diving in the weeds on this stuff. I know we've talked about it for quite some time, but it's nice to finally break it apart and really get into it. And I think I hopefully people listening to this also got the same thing. But because I know like on our channel, I know we talk all about just getting motivated sellers in any possible way we can in the smartest way without just blowing your budget. So it's actually broken down so that you can actually do it and understand it, because there's just a lot of noise in this industry. And so that's kind of the goal. But I hope you guys appreciated this interview. I mean, as far as this, if you like it, please feel free to subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below for Cole or I, and we can be happy to respond to you. But otherwise, no, dude, Cole, I appreciate your time. I think it was a great interview today.